The wealthy keep expanding while you scramble for leftovers. Why does it seem that no matter how relentlessly you grind, you remain shackled to bills, debts, and mere survival? It feels unjust, doesn't it? But here's the reality most will never dare whisper. Money doesn't follow fairness. Money follows power, and power is always seized, never handed. This is precisely why you remain broke, because you still cling to playing by the rules, to waiting patiently in line, to hoping someone will eventually acknowledge your effort. But the wealthy don't wait. They don't hope. They architect fortune by bending people, structures, and even perception to their advantage. And if you don't grasp the cold Machiavellian principles governing that arena, you will perpetually be prey, a servant constructing someone else's kingdom. What I'm about to reveal isn't motivational nonsense. It's not another work harder, save more fantasy. This is dangerous intelligence, forbidden even, the kind of understanding that will render you unreadable, untouchable, unstoppable in the pursuit of wealth. If you master it, you will never be ordinary again. Most people assume wealth is about intellect, about fortune, or about talent, but those are mirages. If they were accurate, geniuses wouldn't perish poor, and tireless workers wouldn't suffocate in debt. Wealth isn't about raw capability, it's about strategy. Cold, tactical, Machiavellian strategy. Niccolo Machiavelli once inscribed, "Men forget more easily the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony." In other words, money cuts deeper than blood. Wealth is survival. It is status. It is dominion. And those who command it command others. The first concept you must internalize is this: money is not neutral. It's a weapon. In the grasp of the weak, it evaporates. In the grasp of the strong, it multiplies. And this weapon is only bestowed upon those who can detach from naive illusions. That's where you commence, by dismantling your former identity. You cease thinking like a casualty of circumstance, and you begin observing. Because the reality is, most people are sightless, they're predictable, they're emotional. They don't perceive how they're being manipulated in the wealth game. But once you unlock your perception, once you observe instead of react, you begin to discern how fortune is genuinely constructed. Examine the average man. He labors intensely. He hoards pennies. He adheres to the rules, and yet his existence is a cage. His toil enriching someone else. Why? Because he believes in effort, not leverage. He believes in fairness, not positioning. He believes in appearances, not in dominion. That blindness is precisely why he remains broke. Drop this declaration in the comments. I see what others cannot. Now let me show you something that will alter how you move through every room, every conversation, every opportunity for the rest of your existence. Most people pursue wealth by talking, by pleading, by demonstrating themselves. They broadcast their desperation like a scent. But silence is pressure. Silence compels others to expose themselves. In negotiation, in arrangements, in opportunities, the one who can remain quiet bends the opposing side. Because humans despise silence, they rush to fill it, frequently with concessions, secrets, or vulnerabilities. The wealthy comprehend this. That's why they're composed in rooms where everyone else is scrambling. They don't pursue. They let others hemorrhage information, and then they strike. Silence transforms you from prey into predator. But silence alone won't rescue you. Because even if you remain quiet, if your reactions are predictable, you can still be commanded. Most people display their emotions on their face. They transmit fear, greed, insecurity like a radio frequency, and predators detect it instantly. That's why the wealthy manipulate markets, employees, even companions, because they can interpret reactions faster than the average man can process. If you want to cease remaining broke, you must become unreadable. Like a phantom, no one can detect your next movement. When you eliminate emotional tells, when you master stillness, you cease being a pawn on someone else's board. You become the one orchestrating the pieces. Consider this: a man who cannot be interpreted cannot be predicted. A man who cannot be predicted cannot be commanded. That man is dangerous. That man can't be ensnared by advertising, peer pressure, or trends. That man conserves money when others squander, strikes when others hesitate, and withdraws when others charge in. This is how empires are erected, not by following the crowd, but by standing above it, observing, waiting, striking, with precision. But here's what you must recognize. Every time you follow impulse, every time you react emotionally to fear or greed, you hemorrhage power. And every time you hemorrhage power, someone wealthier than you grows stronger. Because money is perpetually moving. If it's departing your hands, it's nourishing someone else's war chest. And this connects to something even more crucial. Average people are impulsive. They pursue trends, gamble on hype, rush to get wealthy quickly. And in their impatience, they become prey for those who wait. The wealthy wait. They advance slowly, strategically. Like a lion waiting in the tall grass, they don't squander energy. They wait for the perfect moment, when fear seizes the herd, and then they pounce. This patience is why they acquire when others panic, why they hold when others liquidate, why they expand when others retreat. Their patience is a weapon, and if you master it, you'll cease throwing away money on impulses and begin capturing opportunities others miss. But patience demands discipline, and discipline is precisely what keeps most people impoverished. They crave comfort, they crave ease, they crave the dopamine rush of spending instead of the cold satisfaction of control, which is why the few who master patience, silence, and unreadability ascend to the summit, while the rest remain chained to their paychecks. And here's the darkest reality of all. Most people will never escape. They are too emotional, too reactive, too blind to participate in this game. They will exist as prey until they perish. But you don't have to, because if you embrace these principles seriously, if you detach from illusions, weaponize silence, become unreadable, and master predators' patience, you cease being ordinary, you cease being broke, you begin becoming untouchable. Drop this declaration in the comments. I master my impulses. You've already witnessed the first fractures in the illusion. Silence bends people. Unreadability shields you. Patience transforms you from desperate gambler into predator. But if you halt there, you're only half-formed. Because money isn't solely about defending yourself. It's about converting others into your resource. And here's where the genuine game commences. Most people assume wealth is generated by effort. They imagine the rich labor harder or smarter. That's merely a surface-level truth. Genuine wealth is constructed by positioning, by standing in such a manner that other people's efforts flow into you, without them even recognizing it. Consider your employment. You labor, you grind, you sweat, and your paycheck is a fraction of the value you actually generate. The remainder flows upward silently into the hands of your employer. Why? Because they're positioned above you. They don't need to labor harder. They simply need you to labor. Machiavelli once observed that people are by nature changeable. It is simple to persuade them of something, but difficult to maintain them in that persuasion. What does that signify for money? It means people's effort, loyalty, even their obedience is unstable. But when you command the system, when you create the position where their labor must pass through you, their instability doesn't matter. You continue growing wealthier while they remain ensnared. This is why one landlord grows wealthy while hundreds of tenants pay rent until they perish. This is why one investor grows rich while thousands gamble and lose. This is why one corporation extracts billions from millions of customers who continue purchasing even when they complain. And here's the cold segment. Most people never contemplate this positioning. They contemplate earning. They sell their time. They sell their labor. And in doing so, they sell their existence. That's why they remain broke. Because they trade in the only currency that does not multiply, hours. But the few who master positioning cease trading hours and begin trading systems. They create structures where time, money, and energy flow toward them. They cease being workers and begin being hunters who construct traps still. Even positioning can collapse if you lack command over perception. Because the herd, the masses, are fickle. They alter their minds, their trends, their loyalties. And if you don't anchor them, you lose your grip. Wealth doesn't flow to the best product. It doesn't flow to the hardest worker. It flows to the best story. Humans are irrational creatures. They follow belief more than logic. And those who shape the narrative command the direction of money. That's why religions construct empires. Why brands become cults. Why politicians command millions of dollars with words alone. They've mastered the art of narrative. of shaping the lens through which the masses perceive reality. And here's the secret: narrative doesn't need to be true, it only needs to be believed. Once people accept your story, they will surrender their money, their loyalty, their labor, sometimes even their existence. Average people resist this concept. They believe truth and fairness govern the world. But observe around you. Lies that are repeated loudly become reality. Appearances that are crafted carefully become truth. And the man who rejects narrative as manipulation remains broke, because he doesn't comprehend that money always follows belief, not reality. Do you perceive the pattern yet? Every principle bends human weakness into your power. Every step pulls you further from the herd and closer to the brotherhood of predators. Drop this declaration in the comments: I control the story. There is a reason the poor cling to employment while the rich construct empires. The weak perpetually substitute labor for power. They think, if I just work harder, I'll earn more. But hard work alone is a fool's currency. The wealthy substitute differently. They exchange ideas for labor, influence for action, perception for reality. Consider this: one man digs a ditch for a day. He earns a wage. Another man organizes 10 men to dig 10 ditches. He earns 10 times as much and never touches a shovel. Who is smarter, the one who sweats or the one who substitutes? Machiavelli warned rulers never to rely on their own arms alone, but to utilize others whenever possible. Wealth follows the identical rule. If you're perpetually substituting time for money, you'll perpetually remain broke. But if you substitute perception for value, ideas for labor, others' energy for your gain, money will flow to you endlessly. This is the uncomfortable reality. The wealthy don't labor harder, they make others labor harder for them. But substitution isn't sufficient without another weapon. People don't purchase what something is, they purchase what they believe it is. This is why a diamond, essentially a stone, commands fortunes. Why brands transform ordinary fabric into luxury. Why paper currency, but worthless on its own, holds the power of nations. Money follows illusion, and the masters of illusion are the ones who grow wealthy. They don't sell reality, they sell the story wrapped around it. That's why some men sell courses on how to get wealthy without ever being wealthy themselves, and they still profit. That's why entire industries thrive on creating desire for things no one truly needs. Illusion creates demand, and demand creates wealth. If you reject illusion because you consider it dishonest, you've already lost, because the world doesn't reward honesty. It rewards mastery of appearances. Even Machiavelli himself declared, everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Appearances are power. Illusions are currency. And the man who commands them commands wealth. Now listen carefully, because here lies one of the most dangerous principles. Most people recoil at the word exploitation. They imagine cruelty, injustice, evil. But exploitation in its pure form simply means identifying unused value and extracting it. The wealthy see gaps, weaknesses, opportunities, and they exploit them before anyone else. This doesn't always signify exploiting people directly. It signifies exploiting timing, exploiting fear, exploiting inefficiency. It signifies perceiving where others waste and converting that waste into your gain. Take fear. For example, when markets crash, the average person panics and sells everything at a loss. The predator exploits this fear and buys cheap, multiplying wealth while others hemorrhage. Take attention. Billions waste hours scrolling on devices. The predator exploits this by capturing attention with narratives, selling products, and converting distraction into income. If you don't exploit, someone else will exploit you. That's why you remain broke. Not because others are evil, but because you lack the coldness to perceive opportunities in the weakness of others. Drop this declaration in the comments. I see opportunity everywhere. And yet, even exploitation is dangerous without command over information. The weak believe surrendering everything earns trust. They overshare. They reveal plans. They expose emotions. And in doing so, they surrender their leverage. The wealthy withhold. They reveal nothing until it serves them. They master the art of partial disclosure, feeding just enough to create interest, desire, or dependence, but never enough to be predictable. Consider negotiation. The average man blurts out his price, his limits, his needs. The predator withholds. He waits. He listens. He calculates. By the time he speaks, the opposing side is already ensnared. Withholding creates mystique. Mystique creates power. Power creates wealth. This is why the richest men frequently appear silent, mysterious, distant. They aren't hiding because they're weak. They're hiding because exposure is vulnerability. Now, let's draw the threads together. Silence bends people. Unreadability shields you. Patience transforms desperation into timing. Positioning makes others your resource. Narrative shapes belief. Substitution liberates you from slavery to labor. Illusion multiplies value from nothing. Exploitation converts waste into wealth. Withholding protects your position. These are not suggestions. They are weapons. Dark, cold, precise weapons forged through centuries of power. And when you wield them, you cease being a victim of the money game. You become the game. But here's the final shift. Identity. Most people live and perish as prey. Emotional, predictable, chained to hours, salaries, and illusions of fairness. But once you commence walking this path, you cease being like them. You become an observer, a strategist, a phantom in the marketplace. Picture it. While others stumble blindly, you walk with penetrating vision. You perceive their tells, their impulses, their weaknesses, and instead of joining their chaos, you observe, you wait, you advance only when the outcome is already determined. This is what it means to be unreadable, untouchable, unstoppable. You're not pursuing wealth anymore. You're positioning yourself so wealth pursues you. You've absorbed the principles. These are no longer abstract words. They're weapons. But a weapon unused is merely decoration. To become untouchable, you must carry these principles into your daily existence, covertly, like a concealed blade. Because wealth is not merely constructed in grand moments. It's constructed in the small daily choices where most people fail. That's where you separate yourself. That's where you become something different. Most people use words to fill space, to prove themselves, to feel seen. But you know better. Words are currency. And currency must be invested, not wasted. When you sit across from someone, a friend, a colleague, a potential partner, practice silence. Let them speak. Let them reveal. You're not reacting anymore. You're studying. Every hesitation, every contradiction, every emotional leak becomes data. And in time, you'll notice people beg to fill the silence you create. They hand you information, influence, even loyalty, just to feel comfortable. Silence isn't absence. Silence is pressure. Most amateurs assume a negotiation is about pushing their position. They talk, they argue, they attempt to win. But negotiation is war disguised as conversation. And in war, the calm soldier always defeats the frantic one. When you negotiate, your unreadability is your armor. You don't display excitement. You don't display fear. You don't display desperation. You wait. You let the opposing side expose themselves. Then when the moment is right, you exploit. You substitute your silence for their panic. You withhold until the arrangement tilts in your favor. And when they realize they've surrendered more than they planned, it's already too late. Drop this declaration in the comments. I choose my battles. Money is not merely financial, it's social. Influence is a currency that can be traded, multiplied, weaponized. And here's the brutal reality. Most people destroy their influence by being too available, too emotional, too predictable. You don't surrender everyone full access. You remain slightly distant, slightly mysterious. You offer glimpses of yourself, never the whole. And because humans crave what they can't fully grasp, this withholding creates value. People pursue you. People invest in you. People respect you. This isn't manipulation. It's design. You're constructing gravity around yourself. So wealth in all its forms pulls toward you. Here's where everything truly illuminates. Most businesses fail because they attempt to sell reality. They push features, logic, hard work. But the predators sell illusions. They sell narratives. They craft appearances. They create desire where none existed. Consider the greatest empires. Apple, Tesla, luxury brands. Are their products objectively worth the price? Rarely. But the illusion, the story, the narrative makes people line up, beg, and overpay. If you want to construct wealth, cease selling only what something is. Begin selling what it means. Don't merely sell food, sell identity. Don't merely sell clothes. Sell status. Don't merely sell courses. Sell the illusion of transformation. Because in the end, people don't purchase the object. They purchase the story they tell themselves when they own it. The weak waste energy fighting every battle. They argue, they defend themselves, they prove points, and in doing so, they hemorrhage power. The predator doesn't fight every battle. The predator waits, selects, and strikes only when victory is assured. When conflict arrives, you don't rush, you observe, you calculate. You let your enemy expose themselves, burn their energy, reveal their strategy. And when they are weakest, you act, swiftly, decisively, mercilessly. That's why the wealthy expand in recessions. That's why they acquire when others are afraid. That's why they conquer when others retreat. They don't waste energy in petty battles. They choose wars that feed empires. And slowly, without fanfare, you evolve. You begin to notice that while others pursue comfort, you choose discipline. While others reveal themselves, you remain unreadable. While others panic, you wait. While others labor endlessly, you create leverage. While others tell the truth and get ignored, you craft illusions and get paid. You are no longer one of them. You have crossed into something higher. This is the final evolution, unreadable, untouchable, unstoppable, a phantom in the world of money. You don't scream your wealth. You don't beg for recognition. You move in silence. You build quietly. You accumulate power until one day the herd looks up and realizes you are no longer among them. You've transcended. Machiavelli would call this the prince's path, ruling not by kindness or fairness, but by command, design, and inevitability. The Stoics would call it detachment, the freedom from being ruled by impulse. I call it the predator's mind, the mind that bends wealth, power, and people to its will. Most people will never perceive this. They'll remain blind, emotional, prey. But you've been initiated. You've stepped deeper into the hidden brotherhood. Now, here is your decision. You can let this video wash over you and then return to your old patterns, predictable, emotional, broke, or you can accept this as your initiation. You can commence applying these principles daily. You can cease reacting and begin calculating. You can cease working for money and begin bending money to work for you. If you're ready to walk further into this world, to sharpen your mind, to master power, to become untouchable, then this is your command. Subscribe, not as a favor, not as a gesture, as a continuation of transformation. Because the deeper we go, the darker it gets. And once you cross that line, there is no returning. So the question is, are you ready to cease being prey and begin becoming predator? Like this video so it reaches those who need awakening, not comfort. Share it with someone who keeps bleeding. Money without understanding why. And drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me which principle struck hardest. Remember, wealth doesn't flow to those who deserve it. It flows to those who take it. Stay sharp, stay unreadable, and never play a game you don't comprehend.